excuse me. Okay. So we were discussing about different aspects of combustion chambers. Okay, I hope you can see the slides. Can somebody confirm that you can see the slides?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Slides are also there uploaded in the Teams portal in your class, gas turbine class. So you can download it and see if you want. And you can go through the same materials which are presented here from the book of El Sayed Ahmed. Okay. Uh, so what we are discussing, only these parts should be sufficient. There may be additional material, but you will get a good knowledge. So we had started discussing about combustion systems, combustion chambers, and we have noted that combustion chambers are an essential part which is required for imparting the energy to the fluid so that we can increase its temperature to the maximum temperature, and this is required so that work can be extracted from the using the turbine, and this work is used for either running the compressor or in addition to running the compressor also running generator for generation of power, or additional enthalpy which remains can be exhausted in case of gas like jet engines through a nozzle to generate thrust. And we have gone through some of the basics of how the air circulation occurs. So most of the, I will just repeat it again, a little bit of yesterday's discussion. So most of the air which comes out of that, around 30 to 40% goes in as primary air. Okay, goes in as primary air, which takes part in the primary combustion. Fuel is injected and it mixes with small amount of primary air. Rest of the 40% primary air comes in and mixes, and there is a relatively high fuel air ratio in this region to sustain combustion. But the flame temperature is high, so you need to add more and more air from the liner. Now the liner is the inner cylindrical region. Okay, there are channels in the liner, as you can see here. Channels are there, then here channels are there, through which air comes in, and it dilutes the combustion chamber gas mixture and reduces the temperature. Okay, and we have seen three types of systems: can type. Then can type is, we have separate combustion systems. Okay, each of them are separate and around the periphery of the shaft. Each have their own liners and own fuel injection, igniters, everything separate. Okay, each of them are independent. Then cannular, where the main casing is independent. The main casing is common, but the liners and the fuel injectors are independent. And annular, where both the casing and liner are common and only you have fuel injection at different locations. Annular, okay, so all of them, so I did not discuss in yesterday's class, have their own advantages and disadvantages. So for example, the can type or cannular, this was the first type which was used. These are more these are very good for centrifugal compressors which were initially used, because from the centrifugal compressor after the diffuser you will have separate like multiple number of diffusers. Each of the diffuser can pass the flow to one of the combustion chamber. Okay, and the advantage is that these are structurally sound, means they are strong, and means with high temperature the chances of deformation or buckling is less. Okay, because of their small radius, but this adds to the weight of the system, and considerable weight of the system is added. One more advantage is that once you design one part, one combustion chamber, all the others are similar. So designing each combustion chamber is slightly easy. Means you only need to design one of them, and similar designs are used for all the other ones. Okay. Second type was the cannular one, which is a mixture or the hybrid, you can say, midway between fully annular and can type. And these are some of the advantages of the can type, means has partially good strength, while the weight is reduced because you don't have independent cases. Okay, so the weight is reduced, and moderately good strength also. Whereas this annular type of systems, which are nowadays very common, because of their lightweight, these are very lightweight systems, and as a result, they are because the weight is considerably lower, because you don't have separate casing and separate fuel, systems, separate liners for each. This has a lot of advantage. However, there are two drawbacks. One is that because these cylinder diameters are large, the stresses generated at high temperature there is a tendency to buckle at high temperature. So you should or we should design it with more care. Okay, so the design is more complicated. Second thing is that in general also design is more complicated. Why? Because otherwise, if you do not carefully design, the flame temperature is not evenly distributed around the periphery. Okay, so ultimately after this the turbine is there. So turbine should face a uniform flame temperature. So as a result, or as a requirement, or because of that, the combustion chamber should also have uniform temperature around its periphery. So that also designing needs to be carefully done by the way of fuel injectors and how the air is spread. And we have seen how to calculate the fuel air ratio. So we already knew how to calculate fuel air ratio for actual cases. We now also know how to calculate for stoichiometric cases, means exact amount of air required for burning a hydrocarbon. Fuels are some sort of hydrocarbons. And then we have a estimate of whether the fuel is lean, whether the mixture is fuel lean or fuel rich. If it is a lean mixture, this equivalence ratio is less than 1. So typically for jet engines, it is much less than 1, less than 0.5 even. Okay. So you should be able to calculate this, and I have given one example problem, shown one example problem in the class notes, as well as given one more example problem as an assignment. So up to that point we had discussed. So we will continue our discussion about the combustion chamber. So what we are doing, we are discussing different aspects of combustion system. Okay, without going into too much details, because if you want to go to too much details, you need to do CFD calculations, which is beyond the scope, which are more like research problems. So you have to do combustion analysis using CFD, or turbulence using CFD, turbulent flow using CFD. So those are more like research problems, or research and design problems. So so another aspect of combustion chamber is its performance, how to measure the performance of combustion chamber. And there are a few important parameters which dictate the combustion chamber performance, or based on studying these parameters, we can say whether the combustion chamber is performing well or not. So the first parameter is the pressure loss in the combustion chamber. So we know already that there will be some pressure losses in the combustion chamber. We cannot streamline the process fully. Why will there be certain amount of pressure loss? Means why we cannot streamline it fully? Means by design you need some amount of pressure loss. Why is it required? Means because of some design consideration. What is the reason? Answers.
Wall friction, sir.
Wall friction is there, but wall friction anyway is not the only important component. There are some other things which are induced by design. Okay, so for example, if the flow is very smooth, it passes smoothly. Okay, if you can design a very smooth chamber, very smooth cylinder, so that the flow passes smoothly. But in that case, the flow will go very fast and the flame will flame out. Means the flame will go out, stop. So you have to again reignite. Okay. So as a result, you induce some amount of turbulence in the flow. Okay. So for example, if we go back, by injecting flow from different holes at different regions, you induce some recirculation zones to sustain the flame. Okay, and whenever there are recirculation or turbulence or similar like deviations from smooth flow, it will induce some pressure loss. Okay, so you cannot avoid pressure loss. If you want to avoid pressure loss, you could have made it like a single cylinder, straight cylinder, but then the flame will just go out. So to hold the flame, you need to induce some circulation, recirculation and turbulence, and as a result, there will be some pressure loss. Is it clear? Some answers? Okay, anybody can answer. Okay, when I ask some question. So clear to you why these pressure losses occur or needs to be there?
Yes, sir.
We cannot avoid this. Okay, so these losses because of turbulence and friction are known as cold loss. Okay, cold loss. This cannot be avoided. This is known as cold loss. Why it is called cold loss? Because even when the combustion is not there, whenever combustion is not occurring, say we have a test vessel, test combustion chamber, okay, and we pass some air in the similar manner as shown here without injecting fuel, okay, without combusting or without igniting, we pass the air. So then also we will find that the similar amount of loss is occurring because of friction. Friction is one point, then recirculation, all these things. Okay, so this is present even when the fuel is not burning or the mixture is not burning. So as a result, this is called as cold loss and is the most important part of pressure loss. There is a secondary pressure loss, okay, which is known as fundamental loss or fundamental pressure loss. This occurs only at when there is combustion. This is also known as hot loss, okay, and occurs only when there is combustion, okay, and this occurs because of temperature rise. So this is a function of temperature, as you can see, where T01 is the inlet temperature and T02 is the outlet temperature. So if the outlet temperature keeps on increasing, this additional loss will increase. This happens, why this happens? Because see, when you increase the temperature, the density of the fluid and specific volume means density of the fluid goes down, specific volume goes up. So with low density of the fluid, to keep the same mass fluid, the velocity actually increases in the combustion chamber. So to induce this velocity increase, because there is an increase in velocity, it leads to a reduction in pressure. So there is a pressure gradient, slight pressure gradient that is set up because of this increase in velocity due to temperature. Okay, this additional pressure drop, okay, due to the increase in velocity due to temperature, rise in temperature, is known as fundamental pressure loss and is only present when there is combustion, because if there is no combustion, there is no temperature rise and it is not present, and it increases with temperature ratio. So the total pressure loss can be denoted by some factor. You don't have to memorize these things, but you should know like how means at least the graph you should know how the pressure losses vary with temperature. So the cold losses do not vary with temperature because they are frictional losses and other viscous losses. They don't depend on temperature. But the fundamental losses, hot losses, depend on the temperature ratio. So it can be represented as a function of the like some constant which represents the cold loss, and some variable which is a function of temperature ratio which represents the hot loss. Okay, so this is an important parameter. This pressure losses is an important parameter to measure combustion chamber performance. We want the pressure loss to be as low as possible, but within the given constant that flame should be sustained. So that is the constant. So it needs to be optimized. So now the second important parameter, excuse me. Okay. So the second important parameter is that just a second. Do you see full screen mode or do you see full screen mode?
It is full screen, sir.
Okay. is the combustion efficiency. Second important parameter is the combustion efficiency, and we have discussed about combustion efficiency, how to take this into cycle calculation. But how does it vary? That also we can briefly discuss. Okay. So typically the combustion efficiency is very high. It is defined as the actual enthalpy that is released divided by the ideal enthalpy that would have been released. Okay, ideal enthalpy difference during combustion is equal to the calorific value of the fuel. Okay, so the actual enthalpy release is slightly less, and we consider it to be 98-99%, very near to 100% during typical normal operation. Okay, so this we have considered, and it can be also written as a ratio of ideal mass flow rate of fuel by actual mass flow rate of fuel. Means the inverse, because ideal mass flow rate of fuel will be less because it releases more heat. Actual mass flow rate will be more. We can also define like this. So for this case, so it is cut off at the bottom. Okay, so it depends on two factors. Okay, sorry, it depends on no, not this case. The second one was two factors. This combustion efficiency depends on the air fuel ratio. And during a typical operation, the air fuel ratio goes from around say 40 to more than 100. Okay, so this is the typical range of air fuel ratio. Here they have shown 40 to 130. So at say 40 is to or 50 is to 1, the combustion efficiency is quite high. Okay, if you go to very rich mixture on the other side, the efficiency will reduce if it is a very rich mixture, because you will not have sufficient amount of air at localized regions for complete combustion. So some local spots will be there where the fuel is more than the stoichiometric ratio. So the amount of available oxygen is less than required. So full combustion does not happen. So the combustion efficiency will go down. On the other hand, if you go to very high air fuel ratio also, combustion efficiency will go down, because if you go to very high air fuel ratio, can somebody explain why, what may be the cause for this? What is the consequence of having very high air fuel ratio? Why do we change
Less
the air?
amount,
Yes?
so less amount of fuel to be burned is present for combustion.
No, fuel has to be burned based on the required power. It is the air which is being changed. You cannot reduce the amount of fuel, because then power generated will be less. So air fuel ratio design is made by designing the amount of fuel and then changing the amount, designing the amount of air. So less air fuel ratio, large air fuel ratio means more air. Fuel is not decreasing. Okay, because with less fuel you will get less power, but you need a sufficient power for an engine. So that is not the case. Why do we change the air fuel ratio? Why is it kept so high for gas turbines instead of say compared
to lower the maximum temperature?
To lower the maximum temperature, correct, good. So to lower the maximum temperature. So what will happen if we keep on increasing the air fuel ratio? The air keeps on increasing.
Like it is possible that we don't get sufficient ignition temperature.
So it will not, that also is possible at very high air fuel ratio. But even if we get ignition, but at high air fuel ratio, the temperature will be lower and the reaction rate will be quite low. Okay, reaction rate depends on temperature. Remember, reaction rate, we have seen that it depends on temperature. It is higher at higher temperature. So if the reaction rate is low, there is not sufficient time available in the combustion chamber for full reaction to occur. So the combustion efficiency goes down in that case also, when more air is present, very high amount of air is present. You have to think logically. High air means low temperature means low reaction rate means more time is required for reaction, but the time is fixed. Time is equal to how much time it takes for the air to go from the inlet to the exit of the combustion chamber. So within that time, full combustion will not happen, and the efficiency will go down slightly, as you can see, but still it is quite high. It goes down slightly. So this is the second parameter. Is it clear to everyone? So logically you have to deduce these things. Okay, and this type of questions you can also expect in the exam. Means why this is happening, this type of thing. Instead of asking write the formula for pressure loss, I may ask you that state how the why the combustion efficiency decreases at high air fuel ratio. This type of questions, which shows your understanding. Then the third important parameter. So one important parameter was pressure loss. Second is combustion efficiency. Third is combustion stability. What is combustion stability? It now coming to Ujjwal's point. I think Ujjwal was answering, right? It was Ujjwal who had answered the temperature.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there actually we come to this combustion stability, where the matter of ignition comes into picture. Okay. So stability means that combustion should be stable. Means if it blows out, means it cannot be ignited at all. It means that combustion is not stable. So the combustion means there should be constant burning of the fuel and air. Okay, constant burning of the fuel. It should not blow out, or it should not. It should not be that it is not possible to ignite it at all. Okay, so this depends on two factors. One is the air fuel ratio, as you can already understand from our previous discussion just now. Second is the mass flow rate. So let us consider the air fuel ratio at certain mass flow rate, say this line, okay, where I am, okay, this vertical line. This is a constant mass flow rate, but the air fuel ratio is changing from say 0 to 200, okay. So just now I have explained, right? So if you go to very high air fuel ratio, it is difficult, the reaction rate goes down, and as Ujjwal was saying, if you go to even higher air fuel ratio, the flame itself will stop, ignition will stop, because you cannot stabilize the flame at that low temperature, because the temperature will be so low at that high air fuel ratio that you cannot sustain the flame. Okay, so there is an upper limit of the air fuel ratio at any mass flow rate. There is an upper limit which is known as the lean limit or weak limit. Okay, because the weak air fuel ratio. Okay. On the other hand, if you have a very rich mixture, as I was saying, if the mixture is too rich, the amount of oxygen that is available is very less to sustain stable flame. Okay, so again the flame is unstable below a certain air fuel ratio if it is a very rich mixture. Okay, localized spots will be there where the flame will go up. So at a certain air mass flow rate, there is a range of air fuel ratio where this flame is stable. Okay, like between 50:1 and 150:1 for this case. If you go to a higher air flow rate, this range is reduced. Now the second important factor is the mass flow rate of air. So if the velocity is large, mass flow rate large means velocity is large. The tendency of the flame to blow out is also large, because it goes out at a faster rate from the combustion chamber. Okay, so obviously it is more difficult to sustain stable combustion if the mass flow rate is large. As a result, the limit of air fuel ratio keeps on decreasing at larger mass flow rate. So for example, if we consider this region, the stable air fuel ratio is only 100:1 to 70:1, even less at this region. And after some point, you cannot sustain, even with very good air fuel ratio also, you cannot sustain the flame, because flame will just blow out due to very high velocity. Okay, so this region, gray region, shows the stable region and is a function of air fuel ratio and air mass flow rate. Okay, and it shows us the limit of stable operation, stable combustion. So these three are the important parameters: pressure losses, combustion efficiency, and combustion stability, to measure combustion chamber performance while designing the combustion chamber. So now we will move on to another aspect, okay, of the combustion chamber, which is the cooling of combustion chamber, or more importantly, cooling of the combustion chamber lining. Okay, the outer casing does not face the flame, but the flame is faced by the inner liner. Okay, this inner liner that you can see, inner can, this faces very large temperature and will buckle at high temperature. It cannot sustain a high temperature, and temperature can go very high near the actual combustion process. Near this region, it can go up to 2000 Kelvin, sorry, up to 2000 Kelvin, with very high temperature. So you have to protect the combustion chamber liner from this high temperature. The combustion chamber liner will not be able to sustain this high temperature. Okay, what will happen? It will, at very high temperature, it will soften. These are made of very good material, nickel-based alloys, but still it may not melt, but it will become very soft at those high temperature and not able to sustain the pressure. Okay. And various methods have been designed based on airflow. Okay, so the extra air that you had seen, secondary and tertiary air that was present, can be used or is used as cooling air. Okay, and there are different methods to use this air. Okay, for cooling, and we will go through some of the most important methods. So the first and most easiest or most simplest method, which was designed initially, is known as lower cooling. Okay, here the combustion chamber consists of cylindrical shells. So this is like a cross section. Okay, we have cylindrical shells. If I have any, I don't have any picture here, but instead of the straight line, you can consider that cylindrical shells are there, and there are gaps in between the cylinders. Like lot of cylinders are adjacent to each other. Okay, smaller cylinders adjacent to each other, and one overlaps the other one. Okay, and there is a gap in between them, as shown here. Through this gap, the air is introduced, and this causes a line of cold air below this region. Okay, so this is known as lower cooling. The second way, so this is not very effective because the cold air directly goes inside the combustion chamber. Okay, so you need large amount of air to sustain the cooling at the side. An improved method is known as splash cooling, where again between the combustion chamber liner and the combustion chamber casing, you have the cool air, and the cool air is introduced through holes in the combustion chamber, like the holes you can see here. Okay, holes are present, but instead of simple plain holes, there is a obstruction below this combustion chamber liner. Okay, which directs the airflow to be parallel to the combustion chamber liner. Okay, this air comes in like this, but then it moves like this and creates a thin layer below the liner, means inside the liner, which protects it from the high temperature. Okay, this is known as splash cool. This is known as splash cooling, as the air is splashing on this plate. Another similar technique, somewhat similar to this lower cooling, is film cooling, but instead of separate cylinders, you have holes in the like this in the liner, almost similar to this, but the design is slightly different, such that the flow direction is almost parallel to the combustion chamber liner. Okay, it creates a thin film around the combustion chamber liner. Very thin films are created and sustained there, and it creates a barrier between the liner and the hot gases inside. Okay, so currently the most state-of-art technology is known as transpiration cooling. Okay, this is the current state of art, and in this method, what we do is we use a porous liner. The liner itself is a porous material. Okay, very small size pores are present. Hundreds, thousands of small pores are present. Okay, very small pores, through which slowly the air enters. Okay, so it requires very less amount of air, and because the air enters at like, instead of, if you compare with all the other cases, here the air is very well distributed. Okay, it is spread over all the entire plate and is even inside the plate everywhere. It cools the plate itself and also forms a very thin layer adjacent to the plate. Okay, so with much lesser amount of air, you can generate similar amount of cooling as compared to, say, this splash cooling or film cooling. The amount of air required is much less for this cooling. This is known as transpiration cooling, and is based on porous material, porous liner, where the air slowly passes the liner and also goes outside. Okay, so these are some important methods. You can read the book for more details. Other methods are also there, and active research is going on in this area. These are some important areas of research. Okay, in combustion chamber design, 2-3 important areas of research is there. One is on the combustion performance itself, how to sustain the flame using clever turbulence patterns, means recirculation, things like that. Then cooling of combustion chambers, material design, and yes, how to improve the combustion performance. So each of these areas may have one or two teams in a big company like Rolls-Royce or GE. So the cooling effectiveness is quantitatively measured using a parameter called, or cooling, like the how good you are cooling the cylinder liner or the combustion chamber liner is measured by using a parameter called cooling effectiveness. Okay, and it is defined in terms of difference. It is the ratio of difference of the gas temperature. Gas temperature means the temperature inside the cylinder. Okay, the high temperature, say, which may be 2000 Kelvin, minus the metal temperature, which is the actual metal temperature, combustion liner temperature. Say this is at 1400 Kelvin. Okay, 2000 minus 1400 Kelvin. This divided by the gas temperature minus the cooling air temperature, the air which is coming from outside. If the cooling air comes at, say, 800 Kelvin, okay, so you have 2000 minus 1400 by 2000 minus 800, so 600 by 1200, so 0.5. Okay, so ideal case, which is obviously it is not possible, is that you bring the temperature of the casing itself to the cooling air temperature. This is the lowest temperature possible theoretically, equal to the cooling air temperature. When that happens, the cooling effectiveness will become 1. Okay, so please go through this also and try to understand this without going into too much details, but you should know the basics. Okay, what are the different cooling techniques, how these are used. Another important aspect. Any questions up to this point? Questions. Another important aspect is the emission. Okay, emission from the combustion chamber. Okay, so emission is more problem for say, emission is, in this case, is slightly different from the emission that occurs for IC engines. Okay, where you have unburned hydrocarbon and soot particles because of richer air fuel mixture that is used. Here, because you have a very lean mixture, typically the amount of unburned hydrocarbon or carbon monoxide is quite low. Okay, the main emission here, there is also slight amount of sulfur dioxide, slight amount of unburned hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide, but these are very low. Okay, so the main emission here occurs, or main harmful emission, is the formation of NOx. Okay, nitrogen oxide or dioxide, and this you cannot control totally. Okay, because this depends on the flame temperature, and the flame temperature, we know, depends on the air fuel ratio. So at a typical air fuel ratio, if you have a like a typical air fuel ratio, the temperature is such that, so NOx emission becomes quite large beyond the temperature of around 1500 Kelvin. Below this, it is very difficult to oxidize nitrogen. Okay, nitrogen is not easily oxidized, but if you go to more than 1500 Kelvin, the nitrogen, it is possible to oxidize nitrogen quite fast. Means combine oxygen and nitrogen to form nitrogen dioxide and nitrous oxide. So which are very harmful, okay, poisonous gases. And this is a very important thing for industrial gas turbines, which are gas turbines kept on, like, say, in the industry or in some power plant. There you want to reduce the emission as much as possible. So you cannot fully control the NOx emission. So NOx emission will vary. NOx emission is very less at rich or lean mixture. Why is this? What is the reason for this? Can somebody explain why NOx emission is less for very rich or lean mixture? You can see from the graph. Anyone is there? Try to answer this question.
Yes, sir.
What do you think should be the case? I have now explained how NOx forms, or under what condition NOx forms. So can you relate to it? So you have to be able to relate everything. You cannot just memorize, right?
Incomplete combustion.
Sir, for lean
Very rich or very
So
lean,
for
what will
lean,
happen?
so for lean mixture, temperature is too
Too
low
low.
for
Temperature
formation
is
of
too low. Okay.
Yes.
So even for very rich mixture, there will be incomplete combustion and temperature will become too low. So if temperature is too low, NOx formation is less. But when there is optimum air fuel ratio, means for then there may be quite high NOx formation. Okay. But in our cases, so this is the stoichiometric ratio, so maybe somewhere around there. So slightly less than fixed NOx formation is there. And for industrial gas turbine, NOx formation, once it is generated, you cannot stop it in the combustion chamber, but you have to use additional devices which are called selective catalytic reducers. Okay, these are like even in car exhaust systems also these are present, which takes the NOx and injects some urea. So in urea dissociates to form ammonia. Ammonia and NOx reacts to form nitrogen and water vapor. So selective these are known as selective catalytic reducers. Okay, there is a mesh-like structure. You will see that to follow emission norms, cars have all these exhaust gas after treatment devices. Okay, so inside there are catalysts, palladium or platinum catalysts, and when the exhaust gases flow through it, the urea is injected and it breaks down to ammonia, and this ammonia reacts with NOx to reduce it to nitrogen and reduce the amount of NOx formation. So this is required for industrial gas turbines, not used for aircraft because anyway weight is very important concern, and at that altitude NOx is not so important. On the other hand, CO and unburned hydrocarbon, CO is carbon monoxide. Okay, you want carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is not harmful, right? It is harmful in the sense that it is a gas, greenhouse gas, but it is not directly harmful. Carbon monoxide is harmful. It's a poisonous gas. Carbon dioxide is not poisonous. It's only a global warming gas. Carbon monoxide is a directly poisonous gas. You can die from carbon monoxide poisoning. If you sit in a closed car for long and if the engine is running on, there may be chances of carbon monoxide poisoning. So carbon monoxide and unburned hydrocarbons form when incomplete combustion occurs. Okay, and again you should be able to relate that at very large, high temperature or very low temperature, the combustion is incomplete. We have seen here, okay, that the combustion efficiency goes down at very high air fuel ratio, and even at very low air fuel ratio also this will happen. Okay, so at both cases, because the combustion is less effective, means some partially not combusted fuel will be there or partially combusted fuel will be there. So you will have carbon monoxide and unburned hydrocarbon. Is this clear to all of you why this is the pattern with air fuel ratio? Ujjwal? Yes. Okay. So carbon monoxide and unburned hydrocarbons are not a big problem for gas turbines. Okay, so typically they are very small in amount. If for automobiles, we know that they can be also, they have to be stopped using something called diesel particulate filters. Okay, particulate filters which stops this or oxidizers which oxidizes the carbon monoxide. Okay, DOCs or EPCs, but here it is not required. Only the NOx emission is important. So we will move on to another aspect, okay, of the combustion chamber, which is the afterburner, which is present only in some cases like military aircraft, not for passenger aircraft. Only for military aircraft, high-speed military aircraft, afterburners are present. And we have discussed about afterburners from the point of view of thermodynamics, TS diagrams. So what is the role of afterburner? It increases the temperature to a very high level, temperature of the combustion products to a very high level, and by additional fuel injection and additional combustion. Okay, and as a result you have more energy for expansion in the nozzle, so you get much larger velocity, exit velocity from the nozzle, so much larger thrust is generated, but only for short durations. Okay, afterburners are only used for short duration because it is not very fuel efficient. So although you can get very large thrust for very short durations, the fuel efficiency is very low. Okay, specific fuel consumption is high. So why can we go to very high temperatures in afterburners but not in combustion chambers?
Because turbine blade restriction is not there. Blades
Because there are no turbine blades subsequent to the combustion chamber after the afterburner. So after the combustion chamber, there are turbine blades, but after the turbine, then there is the afterburner. After there, only nozzle is present. So if you design the nozzle with good materials, you can sustain very high temperatures in the afterburner. Okay. So the afterburner somewhat looks like this from the back side. Again, those of you who were present in the department, you can take a look. We have a MiG-21 engine here in the lobby, and from the back side, you can see a long cylindrical region. Okay. The entire portion is the afterburner and the flame tube ending in the nozzle. Okay, so almost half of the length is the afterburner and the nozzle, and rest of the half of the engine is comprises of the other parts. And you can see all this directly. You can even rotate the compressor blades and see that the turbine blades are rotating because they are mounted on the same shaft. Okay, or the new students who have joined, when you come here, you can see it is kept in our lobby. MiG-21 engine donated. It was donated by the Air Force from one of the DRDO labs. So you can see the back sides. It's like just like a somewhat like a combustion chamber, and there are two things that are present here. One is the spray bar. Spray bars are nothing but like you can see regions which have multiple fuel injections, not very visible here. So each of this, when you come here, you see that our MiG-21 engine, okay, or you see some YouTube videos. There are fuel injectors which are surrounding this periphery, okay. So this surrounding this bar, okay, circumferential bar, and fuel is injected along these points from all directions, okay, and it is ignited and it gets combusted. Then the second thing is that the velocity here is very high, quite high, okay, from the turbine. So you cannot sustain the flame if you do not use something called flame holders. Again, these are required to sustain the flame so that there are localized regions where the fluid velocity is quite low. Okay, so these looks there are different designs. So you can have conical shapes like this, conical flame holders or conical baffles, cylindrical baffles, or these V-shaped gutters. Okay, conical baffle will look like this. You can place it here, and the air passes through it, and a region of low velocity is developed. Similarly here, and in this region, within this V-shaped regions, low velocity regions are developed, which holds the flame, okay, and sustains the combustion. And you get very high temperature, and which is then passed through the nozzle. Okay. So designing these baffles also is a very important research area for afterburners for military aircrafts. So we will finish this part of the combustion chamber.
Sir, where do we place that flame holders?
After this spray bar, it's not visible here. After this spray bars, okay.
Sir, will it along the cross section or along the circumference?
This is along the cross section. This is looking from the back side. Means say if you look from the side, this is the side view. So if you look this engine from the side, this is the side view. So the flow is coming like this. Okay.
Okay,
From this left to right. Flow is coming from the left to right. So then we'll finish this with a brief discussion about how the combustion mechanism is sustained in case of supersonic combustion or scramjet engines. So only for scramjet engines we have supersonic combustion. Do you know the reason? I have discussed in one previous class why supersonic combustion is required in scramjet engines. Means why the scramjet engines are designed? Why not ramjets? What is the advantage of scramjets? I have discussed this previously.
So
What will happen if I try to use a ramjet at very high velocity, say Mach 8 or Mach 9 velocity? What will be the problem if I try to use the ramjet at very high velocity? Ramjets are used at Mach 3, Mach 4, around that velocity. Okay. If I try to take it to very high velocity, what can be a problem?
Like too much diffusion we will have to do.
One point that is good. Yes, too much diffusion is required. What is the consequence of too much diffusion? One is larger pressure loss. It's a good point. One is larger pressure loss. Second is very large rise in temperature after the diffusion. Okay, very large rise in temperature. So the temperature itself goes to very high at the inlet of the combustion chamber, and at the exit of the combustion chamber you have certain limit, right? You cannot go beyond that. Materials will fail. Although there are no turbines, still there is a limit, material limit, right, for the nozzle. So you cannot go to very high temperature. So the temperature difference between the inlet and outlet of the combustion chamber is reduced. So as a result, you can only inject or only impart a small amount of energy in the combustion chamber. Okay. So at very high velocities, then ramjets or other type of jet engines, other type of subsonic combustion is not suitable. When you have supersonic combustion, you keep the velocity still high, very high after diffusion. As a result, what happens? The static temperature rise is not so high, and the pressure losses are also not so high because the diffusion is less. Okay, so you have a large temperature difference, possible temperature difference in the combustion chamber. You can add large amount of energy also. So that's why scramjets are required, or supersonic means not scramjets. When I say scramjets, I mean supersonic combustion is essential at very high velocity. Okay, and that's why scramjets have been conceptualized and designed, but only prototypes have been designed. It has not been produced, mass produced. Small prototypes, unmanned vehicles have been used for test flights, as I have shown you previously some time back. This is like NASA X-42. This is a scramjet. Okay, and it was tested at very high flight velocity, Mach 10 or Mach 9.4 or something like that. And here you can see it is actually burning a rocket engine to accelerate it to that high velocity. At the high velocity, it started the scramjet, and it only flew using the scramjet for a few seconds. Okay, it was only like an experimental design. You can read more about. So Boeing also has a design, and they have tested. Okay, so NASA has a design and tested, and Boeing also has tested one design more recently, 2010 or 12. You can just check that. So the problem in scramjet engines is that the velocity of the incoming air is very large. As you can see, it is very large. So it will blow out the flame. Okay. So you need some clever design to sustain the flame, although the velocity is quite large. So how this is done? This is done through the formation of recirculation regions and shocks. Okay. So what happens is that you inject the fuel very cleverly at a certain angle, either say perpendicularly or at a certain angle with high velocity. Fuel typically is hydrogen or like some sort of, the fuel is quite different from normal hydrocarbons. Okay. Ethylene is also hydrocarbon, but it is not normal hydrocarbon like kerosene, which kerosene based fuel. Okay, because hydrogen or other fuels give very large, has very large calorific value per unit mass. So this is injected, and because it acts like an obstruction to the airflow, incoming airflow, it creates a shock wave, a three-dimensional shock wave, this bow shock that you can see. In this section, you can see this line. In the third direction, it looks like this, okay, like the front of a helmet, you can say. And this creates, because of the shock, there is a flow separation that is created. The boundary layer separates and creates recirculation region as well as turbulent mixing inside. And this recirculation and turbulent mixing helps in holding the flame, okay, in this within the shock. So the shock actually helps in holding the flame. There are also rotating shocks that are rotating vortex pairs that are generated, which also helps in holding the flame in this region. So these again have to be very cleverly designed. A lot of research is going on, but it's a very difficult, challenging problem. That's why you don't see scramjet engines in production. Okay, these are not yet figured out properly. Okay, till now what people have designed only flies for a few seconds or few minutes. No, they are not have been designed for long-term operation. Material is going to fail, or flame cannot be sustained. Lot of issues are there. So this completes our combustion part. Okay, go through the problem that I have sent and the notes which have been uploaded. And this part we have discussed from the book from El Sayed Ahmed. You can go through the book and go through these parts from the book also to learn more. If you want to learn more, otherwise you can just go through this recording. I have to upload. I have multiple requests from all of you. I know. So downloading each video is taking me a lot of time at home because of poor internet. So I have downloaded all the videos. Now uploading will take even more time for full HD version. So it will take some time. So I have to upload by today. Tomorrow I will keep on uploading, and it will be there in my YouTube channel. So I can send you the link. Okay. Many students have requested. I also aware of this, that I need to upload, but it is a very slow process uploading the videos because of this poor internet connection at my quarter.
Sir, in the department it is quite fast, right?
I don't have time in the department, means I am busy in the department all day. Morning I am running with some file or something else, purchase, something will be always be there. Okay. So in the weekend if I come to the department, it is possible. But otherwise, I mostly this type of work I can only do at night or late night, or this like teaching related work, because department time is very busy with other activities. Lot of activities are there, say purchasing, file processing, things like that, and other things are there, meetings and stuff. Anyway, so not much time is there today. Okay, so we will discuss about turbines in the last class. Not again, it like compressors. It is not like we don't need to go to too much details of turbines. In this case, for gas turbines, the turbines are only of similar type. Okay, so for say those who have learned about power plants or read about power plant or power plant engineering course who have done, you know that there are different designs of turbines. Okay, so for example, there are something called impulse turbine, and there are something called reaction turbines. So those are valid for steam turbines. For gas turbines, all turbines are reaction turbines, as we will discuss in the next class. All turbines are reaction turbines. So the main function of reaction turbine is that, main distinguishing feature is that both the rotating part, which are the rotor blades similar to compressor, and both the static blades, which is the stator, both acts like nozzles. So both actually accelerate the flow, and there is expansion in both of them. If it was an impulse turbine, only the stators are like nozzles, only the fluid expands in the stators, like the static part, and the blades just converts this kinetic energy to say work output. But in case of aircraft engines, both the stator as well as the rotor blades, I will discuss these things in the next class. I'm just giving you an intro because few minutes are left. Both this acts like a nozzle. Okay, so there is expansion in both, and there is static temperature decrease in both. But in addition to that, the rotor blades also converts the kinetic energy that is generated to work output. Okay, so it is the opposite of the axial flow compressor, you can say. And this is a very complicated structure, as you can see, has multiple stages. So this we will see a simpler schematic diagram. We have seen already previously how the turbines look like. So these back stages, these are the turbine rotor blades. Okay, you can see 4 stages are there, 4 sets of blades are there. So these are mounted on the hub, which is mounted on the shaft, and rotate with the shaft at the same speed as the compressor blades. And in between each of them, there will be stator blades, static blades, which are mounted on the casing. Okay, mounted on the casing. This is similar to the axial compressor, but opposite in nature. Okay, similar to the axial compressor, but opposite in nature. So instead of starting from large cross section, you go from small cross section to larger cross section like this. And rotor blades are mounted on the shaft, and stator blades are mounted on the rotor. Stator blades are mounted on the casing. And the function of stators is to act like a nozzle to accelerate the flow. So after the, let me go to the turbine part. This is not a good diagram. I could have found a better one. After the flow from the combustion chamber, there is a first set of stator blades. Sometimes these are called inlet guide vanes. So these stator blades accelerate the flow to a very high kinetic energy. Now the high kinetic energy fluid enters the rotor blades, and the kinetic energy is extracted and converted to work. In addition, the rotor blade also generates its own kinetic energy, and this is also converted to work. So ultimately you get very low fluid velocity out of the rotor, and most of the energy that was present in the fluid is converted to work. Okay, so same thing is repeated again and again. Okay, using multiple stages. So this we will study using velocity triangles like we have done for the axial fork compressors, and then I will go into a few slides about different aspects of turbine blades. Okay, in the last class. Should be sufficient to comfortably finish this part, the amount of material that is left, and one or two problems also we can take a look, or I will give in the assignment sheet. Okay. Problems are very easy once you can draw the velocity triangle. So we will discuss this in the next class, which will be our last class, which is on Wednesday 11. Okay. So we will stop here. Any question?
So sir, next Monday we don't have class, no sir?
No, not required. Okay. Just hold on for a minute. Some important call is coming. Yes. So let me stop the recording.